Why, hello there. What's this? You're having a hard time falling asleep. Well, allow me to tell you a bedtime story. Today's story is called The Whittler. Once upon a time lived a man named Carrie. Carrie was no ordinary man. He was a whittler. Well, that was one of his hobbies. You can't actually get a job as a whittler, but he really enjoyed the art of whittling. He would make little sculptures of things carved out of wood. Little cats, little dogs, little penguins, little frogs. Whatever it was, Carrie enjoyed whittling it. Now his real job was a farmer. He worked his parents' fields, for pay of course. Unfortunately for him, one day something disastrous happened. While working at the field with his parents, as they were harvesting wheat together, a strand of wheat got loose from a stack that they have collected, and the strand of wheat drifted off into the horizon. Carrie, being the gentleman he is, decides to go after it. He runs towards the horizon, staring at that strand of wheat drifting away in the distance. The wheat is fast as a seagull, but he continues to run with an unwavering determination. As Carrie runs, he passes many monuments. He passes forests. He passes mountains. At one point, he arrives at a log cabin, and the wheat drifts through a window of the cabin. Not wanting to talk to people, Carrie sighs before ultimately deciding to visit the cabin. The wheat is worth it, he says. Knocking on the door 3 times, he was greeted by a pleasant old woman. "Hello, dearie," she said. "What can I get you today?" "Hello," Carrie said. "I would like to get my wheat back. It floated in through one of your windows." "Well," said the old lady, "if it's just a single piece of wheat you're looking for, feel free to come into my house and get it." Carrie thanked her and entered her humble abode. In the center of her home lay a fireplace that was crackling with life. Fire danced around in the fireplace, lively as can be. As the golden fire crackled, Carrie paced around her cabin looking for his wheat. He saw all kinds of trinkets from around the world. She had exotic chocolates, strangely shaped vases and mugs, and she had a pen that looked peculiar. It was a fountain pen that was engraved with some very beautiful, intricate markings. They looked like vines wrapping around the pen, but the little vines looked like they had dogs instead of leaves growing out of them. "Wow," said Carrie, "that's a beautiful pen you got, ma'am." The lady laughed. "Well, this pen was a gift from my nephew, Declan. It is a beautiful pen that he received from visiting the Isles of San Diego." Carrie fondled the pen in his hands, mesmerized by how smooth it felt. Every time he traced the ridge with his finger, he could feel all of its little grooves, the eye of the dog, the ridges of its fur, its tiny paws, its tiny tail. Carrie placed the pen back on her desk. He looked around the room one more time, but the wheat was nowhere to be found. Saddened, he took a seat on the floor. "Would you like some tea? Would you like some tea, dearie?" the old woman said. Carrie, looking around the room, sighed and agreed. "Sure." So she hobbled over to her little cabinet, opened up the wooden cabinet, and took out a metal tin. Inside the metal tin, she grabbed a spoon and she ladled out some black specks of what appeared to be dried grasses and herbs. She put them into a bowl and she replaced the black metal box back into its cabinet. She hobbled over to the fireplace, where beside it she pulled out a steel kettle. Beside the steel kettle was a little table on which lay a steel pitcher. Lifting the pitcher with two hands, she shakily poured water into the kettle. Then she hung the kettle over the fire and allowed the water to start boiling. Carrie sat and he listened to the popping of the fire. He listened to the gurgling of the boiling water. And when it was time, the old woman hobbled back to her little bowl on which she kept her tea leaves. She went back to the fireplace and she dumped its contents of the little bowl into the kettle so that it could cook. While the leaves cooked, the old woman went up to Carrie and sat down next to him on the ground. "Dear," she said, "would you prefer it if you got a chair?" "No thanks," said Carrie, "but if you want, I can help you get one." "It'll be all right," she said. "After all, sitting on the floor is said to improve your posture." The two sat in silence for a while before the woman asked him first. "What is your name?" she said. Carrie mouthed. "How about yours?" he replied. "My name," said the woman, "is Gertrude." Carrie sat in silence. "Well, Gertrude," he responded, "have you ever been in a predicament before?" Staring at Carrie, Gertrude nodded. "Why, yes, I have been in many tough situations before. What's the matter, Carrie?" Carrie was excited. She said his name. "Well, Gertrude," he responded, "I am to be a farmer when I grow up." "My parents are farmers, and they expect me to become a farmer as well. I am to inherit their farm after they pass, and to care for all of it, all the sheep, all the cattle, all the goats, all the chicken, and I am to tend to their fields and grow wheat, corn, spinach, and squash." "Well," said Gertrude, "what's the matter with that?" "That sounds like a very fun life, being able to tend to plants and animals alike." Carrie sighed. "Well, nothing's wrong with that, Gertrude. It's just, I feel like my true passion, my true calling in life is for me to become a professional whittler." "Oh," said Gertrude, "you want to become a whittler?" she said as the kettle continued to bubble. "Yes," replied Carrie. "I love to whittle. It is the most fun thing to me in the world. Without it, I cannot live on. Yet, whittling is unprofitable. One cannot make a living off of strictly whittling alone," sighed Carrie as he drooped low. He decided to lay himself on the ground because he was so very saddened by this revelation. Nonsense, said Carrie. No one can become a whittler just like that. I beg to differ, says Gertrude, slowly shifting his weight so he could sit up. Carrie looked at her with the most astounded look he could. Really? He said. Is there any way I can make an income by becoming a whittler? Well, said Gertrude, it is definitely possible for you to become a whittler, but the amount of income depends on how good you are and how lucky you are. If you are a skilled whittler, then your creations will likely sell for more than someone who is, to say, an amateur, she said. And if you are really lucky, let's say you're whittling on the road and a noble passes you on his caravan. If you are approached by him and his servants, and they ask to buy 50 whittled dogs, wouldn't that be a good profit for you that day? She said. Hearing her statements, Carrie was quite excited, but he still didn't completely trust her. Just then, the tea finished cooking as the kettle began to blow with a shrill whistle. That must be the tea, said Gertrude, as she struggled to get up from the floor. Carrie assisted her. He hoisted her up, grabbing her arms and supporting her back. He walked over to the fire with Gertrude, and she, with 2 hands, lifted the kettle by its handle and brought it over to the little table. She placed it on a coaster so that it wouldn't burn the table, and after taking a short break, poured 2 metal cups worth of tea into her little metal cups. Grabbing them by their top, where it wasn't completely filled, she handed it to Carrie. Isn't this going to be hot? He said. No, said Gertrude. I have a skilled artisan friend. His name is Gary. Gary is a metal worker. He designed these cups so that although they are metal, and metal is conductive of heat, they will not burn your hands. Staring at them in awe, Carrie was quite delighted. Wow, he said. He is quite a skilled artisan. Yes, she said, and looking Carrie in the eye, said, you could be too. Those words sent shivers down Carrie's spine. He drank his tea. He took a sip of it, not before blowing on it, of course. And it was the most delightful tea he's ever tasted. Wow, he said. This tea is delicious. Why, thank you, said Gertrude. It was made by my friend Jessie. Jessie? Said Carrie. Well, Jessie must be a very skilled artisan too. Correct, said Gertrude. Jessie owns a tea farm in Bolivia. During the weekends or holidays, they would grow certain trees. These trees were called the habis tree. The habis tree had a special property where its leaves were shaped like little arms. They would pick these leaves one by one, and they would put them in a vat of boiling wine. Now this wasn't just any wine. This was wine infused with rosemary and Tahitian vanilla bean. While the leaves boiled in the wine, they would eventually cook together as a black, flaky, tar-like substance. The pot would be fully charred on the bottom, and everything would be a sticky mess. That sounds horrible, Carrie said to Gertrude. Oh, keep listening to me, says Gertrude, as she kept telling her story. This concoction would then be scraped off with a special ladle, she said. And it would be scooped into another vat where it was left to dry, covered for many years, she said. This special batch that I've been offered was left to age for about 100 years. What? Said Carrie. How do you have this if it's 100 years old? In fact, how would Jessie be alive through those years? Gertrude laughed. Well, it was actually a family business started by Jessie's great, 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 great grandfather Anthony. Anthony was a kind soul who loved growing grapes. He started a vineyard. He made his own wine and he infused them with colorful substances like dried strawberries, like Madagascan blueberries, like golden birdseed. He would infuse them with all kinds of various materials, and they would give the wine a strangely delicious aroma. Fast forward to this technique. He was working with a tribe in northern Sweden. Now the name of the tribe I would prefer not to butcher, but while he was working with them, they showed him an ancient technique of processing tea. You take the blend of leaves from the tea that you desire to make, You grab some kind of alcohol and you put them both in a pot. 1 cup of leaves to a cup of wine. Then, or other alcohol, doesn't have to be wine. Then you allow it to simmer until everything has cooked down. It might ruin the pot you're using, but it's no matter, because the resulting tea will be so very delicious that it will be worth it, she said. Then you would scrape out the contents of the pot, and you would allow it to dry, covered in an area, for many years. The longer you let it dry for, the tastier it becomes. Intrigued by this process, Carrie appreciates the tea. He appreciates how beautiful it is and what skilled workmanship had to go into making it. After some time, Carrie finishes his tea and his chat with Gertrude, and he looks to see that the sun has begun to set. "Oh," said Carrie. "Well, I must get going then." As he stands up, Gertrude grabs both of his hands with hers. "Wait," she said, moving her hands down and clasping them around his. "I have something I must give you." Once again, Carrie helped her stand up, hoisting her up and supporting her back. And she hobbled over to the cabinet and pulled out a handful of wheat. "Here you are," she said. "I collected these a long time ago." She said, "I have my own little patch of land that I grow plants on, and these dried wheat are from my first harvest. This is to save you the trouble of having to dry your own wheat," she announces. Handing Carrie the handful of wheat, she hobbles over to the cabinet yet again. "I would also like you to have my tea," she said. She hands the tea to Carrie. The metal box feels smooth in his hands, and it is lettered with beautiful navy blue letters and a drawing of a swallow in the center of the container. He fondled the container in his hands, the smooth, metallic container, before he slipped both of them into his back pocket. He thanked Gertrude before departing from her humble abode. Arriving at home, Carrie reunites with his parents. They embrace him with a large hug. "Oh, Carrie," his mother says, "where have you been?" "Mother," Carrie says, "I visited an old lady named Gertrude in the forest," said he. "And she told me to pursue my dreams." Upon hearing this, his parents were worried. "Well, Carrie, why can't you just become a farmer?" "You know, it's way more profitable," said his father. Carrie sighed. "Well, although being a farmer is more profitable, I want to pursue my dreams. And upon hearing this, he was banished from his home. His parents sent him away, allowing him to keep only the wheat that he collected, the canister of tea from Gertrude, and a little rucksack of some of his most prized belongings, including his whittling knife, including a little hand axe that he could use to chop trees, and a little jug of water, and a loaf of his mother's homemade banana bread. And thus Carrie was sent off on a journey. As he walked away from home, he cried and cried and cried. Oh, even though he hated that farm, he was going to miss it quite a lot. He's gonna miss Brother Pig, who was his favorite animal on the farm. Oh, how he used to frolic with Brother Pig in muddy puddles around the farm. He was going to miss that pig. Oh, he was gonna miss Mr. Evergreen, his favorite tree to rest upon. He would climb up the strangely sturdy branches of the large evergreen tree that stood in his backyard, and although its bristles tickled him no matter what he did, and they blocked his view to almost anything, he enjoyed the warm scent of the tree, the minty, lemony smell of its leaves. Oh, he was gonna miss his mother's baking. As you can tell by her exceptional banana bread, she was quite a talented baker. Although it was only a hobby, as she believed she could not make a living off of baking. While he walked, Carrie decided that he was going to head back to Gertrude. Maybe she can offer me a place to stay, he thought. But as he wandered through the forest, it was actually getting quite dark now. He couldn't see a thing in the pitch darkness of the night, and he had lost his way. Scared, he ran up to a tree, hugged it, and began to cry. As he prayed for help, he heard noises in the distance. It sounded like a group of people. Silently, he ducked behind the tree as he saw a light approach in the distance. He saw a party of hunters wearing their little hunter caps with gongs slung over their shoulder, one of them holding a dead deer over his shoulder. Carrie decided to approach them. "Hello, hunters," he cried. "My name is Carrie, and I have been exiled from my own home." "Oh, hi, Carrie," said one of the hunters. "My name is Roy," said the hunter. He was the biggest of the bunch, and he was holding the deer over his shoulder. "Allow me to introduce you to my other hunter buddies," said he. "This is Lake," he said, pointing to the skinny-looking hunter in the blue-looking uniform. Lake waved at him enthusiastically. "This is Pigeon," he said, pointing at a stouter-looking hunter wearing a red uniform. Pigeon grunted. "This is Hector," he said, pointing at the classiest hunter. Hector wore a sleek, shiny black uniform. He must be the richest of the bunch, thought Carrie. "And this is Damien," he said, pointing at the shortest hunter of the bunch. Damien sported a yellow uniform. Damien waved back happily. Carrie was delighted to meet them. "Is there any chance you guys can bring me to the closest city?" said Carrie. "I am also a whittler, and I'm looking to start a living for myself." "Why, of course," said Roy. "Of course I'd bring you to a city. Come on, follow us," he said. And the party departed. After a long walk, trekking through forests, and occasionally sitting down to cook pieces of the deer that they had now skinned and preserved, the group arrived at Littleburg, well fed with deer meat and ready to sell the hide of the deer for the hunters and whittled creations for Carrie. Carrie arrived with them at the gate, where a guard stood, leveling his spear. "Hey," said the guard, "where do you think you're going?" "Hello, Steve," said Roy, patting the guard on his shoulder. "How you doing?" Instantly, the guard mellowed out. "Oh, Roy," he said, "I didn't see you there. Well, looks like I didn't get enough sleep last night. I thought you guys were a band of ruffians," he said. Come in," he said. The guard escorted the group into the village, and he said goodbye to them before going back to his post. Carrie looked pitifully at Steve. "Does he get enough sleep?" said he. Roy laughed. "What did he just say?" "He just said that he doesn't get enough sleep." Carrie looked at Roy. "Well, how does he stay alive then? How does he stay awake and in well enough shape to fight off intruders?" Roy looked Carrie in the eye. "Well, Steve was cursed by a wizard to not need sleep. He is the epitome of what it means to be a guard. Although he does feel tired, he could just wake up again by drinking coffee, a nice cup of coffee made by the nice young lady in the hut over there," he said, pointing at a grass hut in the distance, "who brings one to him every afternoon." Carrie nodded, and the two split ways. He said goodbye to the wondrous band of hunters that brought him to the city, and he walked around the village, eventually finding an open market where merchants were selling their wares. Carrie was very intimidated. He saw merchants of all skills and statures selling all kinds of goods, from dried whale parts to handmade spears that had a crescent moon as their tip. Carrie decided to set up shop next to a less impressive merchant. The merchant was selling hunks of dried meat. "Hello," said the merchant as Carrie sat next to him. "Would you like to try a sample of my dried meat?" said he. "Dried meat?" said Carrie. "That's a terrible name," he said, "but I'll give it a try." The merchant shrugged. But it sells well." Curious, Carrie watched the merchant grab a little saw and cut off a thin slice from one of the hunks of dried meat. Trying it, he recoiled at how delicious it was. The meat was chewy, but not dry. It was hard, but as he chewed it, it unraveled in his mouth to reveal an explosion of flavor. It was sweet. It was salty. It was tangy. It was quite possibly the best dried meat he's ever had. Carrie applauded the merchant. "Wow, sir," said he, "how do you make such delicious dried meat?" "Well," said the merchant, "first you slaughter an animal, the saddest part. Then you clean it. You get rid of all the organs and the fatty meat to sell for good money, and you keep only the leanest pieces of meat. I use a special seasoning blend that I will not tell you about, and I will let the meat sit in my cellar for about a couple of weeks until it has firmed up and lost most, if not all, of its moisture. And here are the end products," said he. The merchant went back to doing business, and Carrie thought he should do so too. So, pulling out his axe, he suddenly had a thought. What if I used the axe to help the merchant cut his meat in half?" said he. He noticed that the little knife the merchant used, or the saw, was too small to actually split any of the giant meat chunks in half. He could only saw off little samples for the people to try. He went up to the merchant, saying, "Sir, Is there any chance I can help you cut your meat in half? Why, that's a wonderful idea, said the merchant, and Carrie helped him split all of his meat in half. Feeling better about himself and getting paid 5 pence for his wonderful endeavor, Carrie pulled out some blocks of wood he had collected in the forest while they were walking, and he began to whittle. He whittled little statues of all kinds of things, of birds, of little tiki totems, of frogs, of dogs, of clams, of scallops, of cheese, of charcuterie boards. Eventually finishing a hard day's of work, Carrie collapsed by the side of the road. He yawned and he rested. Waking up, he noticed a customer. He stared at her intently. She was a young woman who was very, very beautiful. She had pretty blonde hair, and she wore a dress of flowers. "Hello," she said. "Is there any chance I could buy a whittled flower for my beloved?" "Well, of course," said Carrie, as he pulled out a block of wood and got to work. "What kind of flower would you like?" "A rose," she said, "'cause red is my favorite color." Carrie nodded, and he whittled her a beautiful rose, almost as beautiful as she. She marveled at his craftsmanship. Before taking the rose from him, playing around with it, and skipping off, Carrie watched as she went to the border of the town, handed it to Steve, and they embraced. "What a beautiful couple," he said, as he went back to whittling. He was paid quite a lot from that rose, 20 pence, enough to feed himself for a week. "Maybe this lifestyle isn't that unsustainable," said Carrie, as he continued to whittle. He heard footsteps. Looking up, he saw a rich-looking man in a suit, which he recognized to be the hunter, Hector. "Hector," he said. Hector nodded. "Hello there, Carrie. You still remember me?" "Of course I remember you," said Carrie. "You're the most memorable of the bunch, with your sleek black suit. Well, maybe except for Roy, because he showed me the most hospitality." "That's our boy, Roy," said Hector. "He's always been a kind soul. Even when hunting, he makes sure to always land headshots, so he puts the animals out of their misery instantly." Stooping down to Carrie, Hector said something to him. "I know you are a great whittler, Carrie, and that is why I would like you to whittle a ring for me." Carrie gawked at him. "Yes," said Hector, "I am about to marry my fiancée, and we would like a ring to celebrate our marriage. But I want this ring to be made from the finest of woods, said he, and I'm very sensitive to wood, so I would like it to feel as smooth as possible, said he. Once you are done, you will be paid a very hefty sum of money. Carrie nodded enthusiastically before setting off into the forest. He looked around, looked at the various trees of the forest, before he eventually wandered upon a soft hard oak, the rarest of the rare, the most beautiful tree that he can find. It was a deep magenta, and it had many, many ridges signifying its age. He knew that at the very center of the tree lay its heart, the softest piece of wood you can find in existence lay in the heart. But he knew that the tree was rare. They were endangered, as the king would constantly come into the forest and have his soldiers destroy these trees to carry them back to make luxuries with the wood. Carrie was faced with a dilemma. Did he want to preserve nature, or did he want to become rich? On one hand, he loved money, but on the other, through his time growing up on the farm, he learned to respect trees. They were beautiful, and they deserved to live as much as you or I. So, whenever he wanted to whittle, he would get wood from an area that the tree didn't need. Perhaps a very thick branch, or perhaps a piece of the wood was rotting, so he cut out the rotting part and used it to make his creations. Carrie decided against it. He sighed, thinking that he would never be rich, as he curled around the tree and went to sleep. Many, many minutes later, Carrie woke up to a soft humming. He looked around to see a little gnome sitting at the roots of a tree, humming a tune while he polished a coin. "Oh, hello," said the gnome. "You must be Carrie," said he. "Why, yes, I am Carrie," said Carrie. "Who are you?" he said to the gnome. "My name is Cornelius Dinglebrand, Cherry Wary Esquire the Third," said the gnome. "But you can call me Cornelius." "Well, Cornelius," said Carrie, "what are you doing here?" "I'm here to inform you that the gnomes are very proud of you and your decision," said he. "We knew that you wanted to chop down the tree to get its heart, but because you haven't done it, we will reward you for your kindness," said the gnome. And through his back pocket, he pulled out a large chunk of wood the size of a fist that looked so soft. "A couple of years ago," said the gnome, "a thunderstorm hit the forest, and it fell one of our beloved oaks. So we collected the heart, and we have been keeping it as an heirloom to be passed down through our generations. But we feel like you have deserved the right to this piece of wood," said Cornelius, handing the wood to Carrie. Carrie thanked the gnome profoundly, bowing to him before returning to the village. There, he began to work on the ring, carving its intricate details, making little ridges with his whittling knife. Thinking back to the beautiful pen he saw, he whittled little indents of dogs as the pattern for the ring. A couple of days later, Hector visited his shop again. At this point, Carrie was a well-respected craftsman, even though he had only arrived a few days ago. Many people bought his whittled creations, and he was beginning to develop a business. "Good to see you again, Carrie," said Hector. "Hey, Hector," said Carrie, "I have your ring." He handed Hector a small burlap sack tied with twine. "Wow, Carrie," said Hector, "I see you have upped your means of production," he said, gesturing at the little gnomes whittling things in the back. "Ah, yes," said Carrie. "I've hired a few employees after they found out how I source my materials. They love the approach of not having to destroy trees to make things," said he. "Well," said Hector, "here is your compensation." And he handed to Carrie a massive black velvet bag tied with a red ribbon. It was very, very heavy, and he could see all the indents of the little coins pressed against the walls of the bag. The bag was about the size of Carrie's torso, and he struggled lifting it. He gently placed it down near his wares, and Hector, fondling the ring, slipped it onto his finger. "This," he announced, "is a brilliant ring. But I forgot to ask for you to make me a second, because I assumed you would out of common sense. You know, we are getting married." Sheepishly, Carrie blushed. "I'm sorry, Hector," he said. "I will totally help you make the other ring in a week." "All right," Hector responded. "I will be back in a week. In the meantime, don't be too happy," he said, smiling, and he left. Carrie continued to work, finishing Hector's other ring, and eventually even attending Hector's wedding as an esteemed guest. Eventually, Carrie got married to his own wife, a beautiful wife indeed, the sister of Steve's girlfriend, and together they lived happily, fostering a generation of children who were allowed to follow their dreams. The end, and sweet dreams to you.